Robertson. Thank you for coming in for your interview. I'm Kayla Warren, I'm the principal.
I'm Kathy Elton, I'm the assistant principal.
I'm Amber Lund, I'm the counselor.
And I'm Britt Barnett, the instructional coach.
Glad to know you all. Thanks for having me.
Yes, ma'am.
We're glad you're here.
We're gonna kind of just go around the table and ask some questions. Real informal, just answer it how you feel. Can you describe your teaching background and experiences, including how your experiences led you to your interest in Westwood Elementary?
I've been teaching 30 plus years. I've taught 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. All subjects. I've taught in a departmentalized situation. I've taught self-contained. And when I got here to East Texas, I just liked the home feel of Westwood, the small, tight-knit group that Westwood has to offer. And that's why I reached out to you guys.
I like that you said that because we do feel like we're family here at Westwood. Okay, can you, were you done with that?
No, I just wanted to say, yeah, I have taught in larger districts and in smaller ones, and I do prefer the smaller ones because you do get a real sense of family, like you said.
So you said 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Which one was your favorite?
I'd have to say 4th because it's those in between, that intermediate kind of thing.
And then you've done departmentalization and all subjects. When you're departmentalized, what's your preference?
It depends. I really like reading and language arts. I just feel like that opens so many doors. Math is very cut and dry sometimes, and I like the freedom I have with language arts, but I love to teach math too.
Okay. This way. Could you briefly state your educational philosophy for us?
That's changed over the years, oddly enough. When I first started teaching in 1982, my philosophy was students didn't need a whole lot of intrinsic motivation that came from the family unit. However, that's changed, so my philosophy has changed, and I feel like that we need to encompass the whole kid. And that means we've got to love them, mother them, discipline them, and teach them. And for some people, that's really hard to do. Know when to let the teaching go and really hold on to the kid, and love them and give them the nurturing that, unfortunately, they're sometimes missing.
That's super important.
Okay, so what are the most important things for you as a teacher to accomplish during the first 2 weeks of school?
Building relationships with the kids. And then with me, they need to know what kind of teacher they're going to have, they're stuck with. They just have to get used to one of me. So, I could drag that out, but really and truly it's building relationships with kids and setting a routine in place, and I think you can do both at the same time. I was going to add something, but
What do you want them to know about you?
that I care about them, that I care what they learn, I care that they come to school ready to learn, and if they're not, why? And if something's going on, I know they're not going to learn. If they're bringing baggage in the door, they can't learn.
Alright, so how do you typically structure think of 45 minutes, bell-to-bell teaching?
Okay, it would depend, but I'll go with language arts, because they would be very different. I think you have to have some kind of warm-up when the kids come in. I like to have that kind of structure when I start, either a language activity, and something that's pretty structured, but not too difficult, that they can get started on their own until all the kids get there. Then move into some kind of vocabulary, phonics, spelling lesson. I like to do a lot of group work, table work, get all the kids involved, hands-on kinds of things. I'd like to eventually get them to the point to work independently so that I can pull and have reading groups, and that just, you know, you really have to get that procedure going with kids. And until that happens, and that's part of that 2 weeks, really 2 to 6 weeks, more like that you're doing that. But then I wanna have some independent work that they can do by themselves, practicing skills that we've learned. Because when I pull them into their reading groups, I want that to be skill-based, comprehension-based, fluency-based, that I can work with those kids. And that anything that's going on outside of the reading group, they're able to take care of themselves or know how to fix it if there's a problem. And that involves, like I said, independent activities. It could be group activities, games that they could play, you know, in their respective groups.
What are the unique needs of at-risk students, and how would you address them while still delivering high-quality instruction?
What are the unique needs?
Just some that you've had to accommodate.
The unique needs, I really feel like our biggest unique need that I've seen with kids is lack of a family structure, a lack of families not putting emphasis on education. That with an education you can break out of the cycle of poverty, you can break out of, you know, a cycle of even living in a certain area sometimes and diversify and branch out. And I feel like that's a huge at-risk area that I've seen over the years. And the other part of the question was what?
How do you address those needs while still delivering high-quality instruction?
I think you can tie it in, and that's why I love reading so much, because you can tie it in with things that you read and pull it in and have them discuss things and let them tell stories and what they see in this story and what does this make them feel like and what can they learn from this, and then pull it in closer to them about themselves, really. And kids will tell you some very interesting things when you sit down with them, especially in small group settings, and sometimes even one-on-one. You know, because I do pull kids when I see they're having an issue, what's going on? You know, you want to write about it, you want to talk about it, you want to draw about it. There's lots of ways they can do it. But it is kind of hard to do that and be successful, I think. But I think part of it is you have to remember the kid is first and the learning will come second. And I just feel like that's a lesson I think you have to learn after you've been doing it a few years.
Okay, tell us about some accommodations you've made for students with special needs in your class.
I have a peer tutor, not a whole lot, but peer tutoring helps with the right match for that. I seek those children closer to me so that I can get to them easily. And I work with them in small groups quite a bit. The accommodations are, I make assignments. If we have a five item assignment, I say do these 3 instead of, and leave out the other 2. Teach them how to use the computer tools that are available to them, how to have questions read to them, if that's their learning disability. Have, I always get confused here. Speech to text, I always get confused. I have to point to my mouth. Teach them how to use the speech to text tools. And I think our tools for our special needs kids has really gotten so much better than it used to be when I first started. And they've just got to know how to use them.
So I've heard you talk about technology. How are you with technology?
I would wish I were better, but I love it.
On a scale of
I
1 to
really-
10, with 10 being your best. And
What kind
one-
of technology? I can turn on a TV and work the computer and load a Google Classroom and do that kind of stuff and make slides and show the kids how to do things. I would stay on a 10 at that. But I don't know what else. I don't know how to code. So no, I couldn't do that. So that would be, I would
Nor
be
do
a
I,
zero.
So you're okay.
But I feel very comfortable with technology, and I love to learn about it.
So you're very familiar with Google Classroom, that
Yes.
is our platform.
Yes.
So describe for us the relationship among curriculum, instruction, and assessment.
Well, it's a backwards design. I need to look at where I want the kids to be, and so I have to look at the assessment to know how I want to design and implement the curriculum. And you have to build from there. You know, it's like when I'm teaching, I always tell the kids, when you learn to play a game, you always, I want to know what the object, how do I win?
Yeah.
And you know, this is how you win, is by doing well on this test. And so that's kind of how I, you know, tell them why we're doing what we're doing. You gotta know where you're going before you can get there.
So what steps would you take in handling a student who is passively non-compliant in class? So like their head's down, they're not working.
That never happens, right?
No. Well, there's lots of ways. I guess at first, I'm assuming this is first time I'm noticing it happening, so the first time is, you okay? You need to go to the nurse. Are you sick? Do you need to go, you know? Maybe a pat on the back. Sit up. Do you understand what you're doing? You know, just do some questioning stuff. Then I would try to maybe sit beside them, work with them to see if it's a learning problem, or if it's truly a behavior problem, if it's an attention-seeking issue. If they brought, like I mentioned earlier, some of that baggage with them that day. If it's something that the kid has never, the student has never exhibited that before, and it's a new thing, then yeah, it would really concern me, and we would have a conversation really quick. What's going on? Are you sick? You know, what can I do? How do I help? Kind of thing.
Alright, so now how are you gonna handle a kid who's just completely disruptive? They're screaming, hollering, like pushing chairs. What do you do in those situations?
I'm trying to think. There's many reasons a kid could do that. If they're endangering the other kids in the room, the other kids are getting out. I'm getting the other kids out. I'm asking for assistance if it's to that point. If I have to remove a whole classroom of kids for one kid, then I'm gonna need, you know, some leadership assistance. If it's just what I perceive as just throwing maybe a little tantrum, go stand beside them, you know, whisper, what's really going on, what are you mad at, who are you mad at, you know? It would kind of depend on the severity of the tantrum. Sometimes I can just look at them.
Teacher look.
And, or just, you know, kind of say something like, don't even think about it.
That comes with
But
those
never-
relationships.
But never, I don't want to say never, but don't raise your voice.
Those leaning conversations is what it's called.
Tell us about one of your greatest improvements or challenges in classroom management.
Improvements or challenges? Challenges, okay. Okay, I'll go with challenges first. What do you wanna know? You just wanna know about the challenge and how I dealt with it, or? I think, the greatest challenge was just a lot. I've had a bunch of kids that appear to be ADHD children, unmedicated, a lot of, special needs children that are very below grade level. And I had to step back and just say, okay, I have to look at the greatest needs right now. And then I have to constantly, and I don't even know if this makes sense, but in my brain it does. I have to constantly keep reminding myself, okay, these kids are only 9 and 10 years old. And sometimes we as teachers demand more than some are able to give. And I have to remind myself of that, and that is a challenge for me, because I have been teaching for a few years, and it goes through cycles, and I've seen it go through those cycles, and it's like I said, my philosophy of education has changed. And even I've changed in the past few years. I've changed. I've had to stop and just say, you might not want to hear this, but sometimes you have to stop the curriculum end of our job and deal to the personal end of the kid. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's the quote, I don't care how much you know it until they know how much you care.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I would have thought to say that.
Did you want to talk about your greatest improvement as well?
Yes, I will talk about my greatest improvement. When I came back to work after coming out of retirement, it was after COVID, and so when I left, we were not using Chromebooks, we were not doing all of that. When I came back 2 years later, it was a completely new ballgame. And I felt like, you talked about technology, I felt like I was drowning in technology because I just didn't know, and that was my greatest challenge. And I was running around constantly asking people how to do this, how to do that. I was figuring it out myself. I watched a lot of YouTube videos how to figure stuff out because I wanted to learn it. And now it's just second nature.
COVID definitely changed
Yeah,
a
it
lot.
changed the world. But
Okay, I'm gonna give you a scenario. So there's this Miss Late-A-Lot, and every day she is late picking up her students from specials, and you're waiting to drop your students off. It's cutting into your conference time, and she tells you that she's sorry, that she was busy, she didn't realize what time it was, all the things. How would you handle this situation with your coworker?
is she on my team? Part of my immediate, oh no,
No,
she's,
yeah, different grade level.
Yeah, because she's cutting into your conference time by being late. And it's constant.
I would probably come to one of you. I'm sorry, since this is not an interview, I would probably not say that. Should I not say that? Can I leave that later?
What'd you say?
No, I would not come to one of you. That would be my inclination. Gosh, I would probably ask a teammate, maybe that knows this person. I say, how do I handle this situation with this person? What should I do? I'd probably ask a coworker who knew this teacher.
Would you say something to her first?
If it were I mean, we're talking a daily thing, yeah, I would. Yes, I would.
That's kind of what we're looking for. We just want to see, are you going to try to fix the situation first, or are you just going to go straight?
Are you just gonna ignore it?
Yeah.
No, I would not ignore that. No, that's because,
We're kind of looking at different, like, we want to know if you're going to be a good team player, and if you're going to be willing to try to help someone and rectify the situation, see if you can fix it yourself first, kind of like we want our kids to do, like ask other people.
probably I would talk to a team member first and say, hey, what's up with this lady? She keeps dropping her kids off. What should I do? And get some feedback from them. And if I like when I'm talking sometimes with adults to, and it's not a comfortable situation, is to try, not really to make light of it, but to kind of make it a little more, downplay it. But I want you to know that I have noticed, it doesn't go unnoticed.
Yeah.
So that would probably be the way I handle it. Thank you for clarifying that. Was that?
And we just want to make sure that you're not going to be like a pushover either, that
Yeah.
you're going to stand up for yourself or stand up for what's right.
Because that's something on our campus that we believe is like everyone has an equal voice. So we don't want it to be where it's just, oh, I'll just let them do it, so if it won't hurt my conference that much.
Or they've been here longer than me, so I'm just going to let them do their thing.
Well, and if it were just inconveniencing me, that's one thing, but if it inconveniences my class, my kids, no, I would definitely stand up and say something.
That's a good answer, and I don't think you were wrong for saying that you would want us to intervene.
I did.
Especially if you're thinking of your kids first.
Well, and you said everybody has a voice, and, yeah, there's just some things I'm not sure I'm equipped to handle, because I'm not in that role, and,
And they don't mind intervening, they just want to see that, hey, have you said something to her first?
yes,
And if you said something to her first, then absolutely, they'll take care of it. So, because you do have
yep.
it. Okay,
Good to
so
know.
how do you know when your students are learning?
You can see it in their face. I can see expressions, oh, now I get it. I like to keep going back and pulling in things and say, remember when we read this? Or remember when we did this? And to hear them go, oh yeah, I remember. And of course, formative assessments is a good way, stand by, test them, But I think one of the, and like I go back to reading because, one of the ways I know that they're learning is I can hear them reading better. I can hear them, actually that just happened today. I was like, oh my gosh, you have gotten so much better. I just kind of went, that's the real way. Is I don't think they see it so much, but I can see it. That's why I think small groups are so good. You can really hear the difference. But yeah.
So you said formative assessments. What do formative assessments look like in your classroom?
I like to do like little weekly quizzes, tests, just lots of practice. Where I start out showing them how they work some with me, they work some together, then they do it by themselves, and then I assess on it. And then you keep spiraling back and circling back over things that they're not doing well on.
Alright, so next, what is your expectation of campus administration?
To support the students and staff. I've always, on every campus I've worked, I've always felt like that, and I think to be listened to. Be available.
because and that is for students and staff.
What would you consider to be your strength in the classroom?
My strength in the classroom. I love what I do. I enjoy it. Even if they're not listening to me. You know?
What is something that you feel like you need to work on?
My patience. Enough said, right?
I think we can all work on our patience.
I loved your answer though. And I think we've all had that moment where we're just teaching our heart out and the kids are looking at us like, whatever, lady. I just still enjoy it, so I get that. Why would a student want to come to your class every day?
Because I want them to. And they know it. I hope they know it. I'm glad you're here.
When someone walks through your classroom, most of the time, what would they see your students doing?
They would see them enjoying themselves, working, not being afraid to ask questions, not being afraid to talk if it's, you know, academically appropriate for what we're doing. What would they see the students doing? Was that their question? Engaged.
You said stuff about groups and stations,
Mm-hmm.
so we see a lot of that in your room.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk us kind of through your
Yeah,
setup in that?
because my stations are not, how you typically see, you know, you move. I give them different activities to do, so they're not moving to the activities, they're just moving to another activity that's either on a Chromebook or in a place in the room, you know, you go get task cards, or you go get this, or you go get that. And that's the thing I like about Google Classroom, you can put things in that differentiates between your levels of kids that you have.
I was hoping that you'd mention something about differentiating levels, because when you have the stations and they're not moving, you can teach
Yes.
the kids what to grab on at
Yes, yes.
So, this is a question I always ask. Is your classroom a noisy classroom or is it a quiet classroom?
Somewhere in the middle. There are times it's quiet when it needs to be. But I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think there are times when I really want it to be quiet. I think kids need quiet when they're reading, especially kids who can't stay focused long enough to read 2 sentences and understand what they read. It needs to be quiet.
I think that's good. I think you have to have a happy medium, or anyways, I did. Because there are times, like you said, that they have to be quiet and they need to be engaged, they need to think. But then it's okay if it's noisy. There's a lot of people that don't think it's okay for the classroom to be noisy, but as long as it's a productive noise.
Yes.
And that was back to the question, you know, because I do want some talking going on. You do want them collaborating and working together and things like that.
It
They
may
have
look
to
like,
have time to interact.
yeah, it may look like chaos, but it's controlled chaos. But I think anybody who ever walked in my room would say that it was loud and it looked messy to a point. But,
Kids were always learning.
but if you really paid attention to it and stuff, you could see what they were doing.
They were all on task, doing what they were supposed to. I think that's another way, like you were saying, that you know your students learn. You've talked about how you have them discuss things, and I think that's another thing, it's just through their discussion, you can see.
Alright. So next, how do you involve parents in the learning process?
I like to communicate at the beginning of the year, like the expectations, like you're gonna have a spelling list, come home on Monday, study with your kids, read with them every evening. I like to keep them informed of what's happening through the week, what we're doing. Some kind of, newsletter, here's what we're gonna be studying this week. These are the vocabulary words for the story we're gonna be reading this week. Special events coming up.
Is there anything you've done, because you're retired and stuff, so I'm gonna ask this question, because you said that there's so many families now that are disengaged. Is there anything that you've found that has made you successful in keeping those parents that tend to disengage, not because they don't care and stuff, but they just feel like they have so much going on? Have you found anything that's successful in keeping those parents engaged?
To keeping the parents engaged, I think instead of letting them know what their student is doing poorly at, letting them know what they've done well. And I think, because I think oftentimes those parents feel that they're just being bombarded with, now what's he done, now what's he done, now what's he done, instead of, wow, it's good to hear some good news now.
So we use an app called Parent Square. Are you familiar with it?
I am.
How do you feel about it? You said you are.
I like it,
Okay.
yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I do like it. It's easy to use and it's a quick way to get in touch with parents, and I think parents like it too, because it's instant.
Have you participated in any extracurricular activities? And if you were to start a club or organization, what might it be?
Well, UIL, I've always enjoyed UIL. And I've done Art Smart and Music Memory. Ready Writing, I've done Ready Writing. Yes, and I do like the club idea. I've always wanted to do a book club. Or some kind of artistic thing with kids. Do y'all have art at this school? Like build